I couldn't either. After lunch, yeah.
So Lucy had them send that film to Pastor Ernst.
Yeah, I got a copy. I'm ready to show it. I don't remember. Is there an easier way to get this? 23? Go back to 10.
Yeah.
See if I can see it. They're together. Yes.
Excuse me, Pastor, I've got to go. My puppy needs to walk.
Inexcusable. All right.
So, I know that many of you want to understand how to spread those seeds of the gospel, to reach out in ways that bring the saving message of Christ to others. And so, one of the ladies that we're planning, she mentioned that, well, we want not just a home missions update, but maybe some insight from our missions and evangelism counselor on how to evangelize. So this presentation is about the changing dynamics of evangelism in America, how it's changed through generations, and how we can use the relationships that we build in everyday life to share the gospel. So we welcome Brad Kirkow, pastor and missions and evangelism counselor.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Is my mic on?
Not yet. It doesn't sound like it.
Oh, that's right. It's that infernal button, doesn't it?
He has a bad AVT. That's my fault.
All right. How about now? Is that better? Okay, great. All right. Well, good to be with you this afternoon. Have a lot of material to go through with you and some stats and so on to show you. And I hope this is helpful for you to understand why we are where we are in the U.S. with Christianity and a path forward. Relationship building outreach. So, a lot of this comes from my counterpart in the Wells, Pastor Jonathan Hine, has put together a lot of good stats, and so borrowing from him. And I also have some ELS statistics and my spin on things as well. You've probably noticed America's changing religious landscape. You've got all of the different, from 1970 through to 2020, you can see different religions, but one that has really changed. You've got mainline. That would be including us. Evangelicals are also in decline from the 90s. But then, this one has really changed. No religion. People who do a survey and they respond by saying, it says denomination or religion, they put down no religion or they put none. It's called the rise of the nuns. Okay? And So that's what's occurring. So I want to talk to you about a bit about that and why that's happening and what we can do about it. Our church bodies, you may have noticed a decline in your congregation, perhaps, but it's not just your congregation. It's not just the ELS. But look, Elka, will the Elka be gone in 30 years? That's the largest Lutheran church body in the U.S. New projections forecast just 16,000 in worship across the entire Elka by 2041. Let's look, Missouri Synod. In 10 years, they could lose 500,000 members. In the Wisconsin Synod, the Wells, they have a couple of different projections, 2039 and 2059. Conservative estimates, down 75,000, high end, 123,000. So losing, projections show there will be great losses in members. Our Evangelical Lutheran Synod, we also are seeing this. So we can see we had peak ELS membership here in 1995. There were 22,000 members in the Evangelical Lutheran Synod. And now, at the end of 2022, we had about 16,000 members in the Evangelical. So about a loss of 6,000 members. So, and if you look at a stat that includes not just Christian churches, but synagogues, mosques, in 1950, 86% of Americans belong to one of those. In 2020, 47%. So we see here some pretty large changes in statistics when it comes to people worshiping. So what's going on? There is a strange bridge in Honduras. You look at this bridge, and beautiful bridge, but it's not over the river. The river is beside the bridge. And you look at it and go, what were they thinking to build that bridge beside the river and not over it? Here's a picture. So what happened? Well, the bridge was very well constructed by very good engineers. But in 1992, Hurricane Mitch came along and sat over that region of Honduras and dumped 72 inches of water within about 48 hours to 3 days. Just dumped water. It stalled right over there. Now, they knew that this kind of thing happened, and that's why they built this special hurricane-proof bridge. But so much water came down that it actually shifted the river. So the river was underneath that bridge. But it literally shifted the river to the side of the bridge. And so I want to use that as an analogy for Christianity in the U.S. For 150 years, Christianity, we had the infrastructure of Christianity in our culture, and it was serving the culture. It was right over the river. You can go to any traditional town in the U.S., you'll probably see beautiful old churches built right downtown. The whole culture had to be behind that, right? For them to, let's have as the centerpiece of our town this beautiful church. Okay, and Christianity has been part of our culture, but now what's happened is Christianity is established, but the culture has shifted away. And so now the question is, what do we do about that shift? Let's look at we can look at different eras that occurred during the 20th century in America, Christianity. The first one is the war, World War II. Let's start there. think about the loss of life, how much that impacted the country. All of the difficult things taking place. And we talk about the post-war revivalism era from 1940 to 1960. And out of that, the evil of war and the horrible things that happened, and then the rise of communism and the threat of nuclear war. Fallout shelters, that threat of a nuclear war and explosion and so on. And during this time, it's when America became very, very, very patriotic. Okay, the words "in God we trust" were actually added to the currency during this time. And people, you have, okay, so you have the Christian flag over there, then you have a U.S. flag. I wonder if you looked at the history of a lot of churches, it was during this time that they actually started putting U.S. flags in the churches. Okay? And so the dichotomy became communism is evil, it's horrible, and the U.S., our democracy, is good. And so you had this good versus evil. So America was good and believing in God was good, and that's how we combat this terrible evil around us. So the mindset of church leaders during this time was, being a proud American Christian will lead to blessing. Churches are responsible for keeping this great nation moral and united. And many people also believed that. And so the churches started to thrive. Now, what also happened post-war, World War II?
Baby boom.
The baby boom, right? Lots of babies. This was a time when suburbia increased in our cities, and massive rise in population. This is from 1960 to 1980. Really, a thought was, build it and boomers will come. Okay. You had a great period of time with churches being constructed. In fact, this church, wasn't this built in 69? The original building?
Well,
71 was it?
71, the church was 69 formed.
Oh, okay.
School, yeah.
Okay, so, we have a lot of churches. There's a big booming era time for Christianity and churches being built across the country. School programs, other programs, different things that went along with the culture of that. Having men's groups, church leagues, women's Bible study, Alcoholics Anonymous, meetings for helping people and so on. The mindset of church leaders during that time is, church growth is simply a matter of good demographics. Plant a church in the right location and it is guaranteed to grow. Build a church in the right area, put a nice sign out the front. That's pretty much all you had to do. You will have people coming and joining your church during this time period. Then we had the 60s, okay? During this time, we have a lot of dramatic things happening in the U.S. You have the Bay of Pigs happening, that crisis. Have race riots going on. Women's liberation movement happening. Assassination of Kennedy. Martin Luther King was slain. Vietnam War, which was very complicated and confusing. So during this period of time, it really was a big, a difficult to comprehend time for Americans, seeing the evils happening in the world. And if we think about philosophically how the culture thought, you can look at a couple of different eras. You've got pre-modernism. So this is, centuries before like the 19th century. And pre-modernism basically said, God put it there, that's how it's always been. Whatever God says is good and moral. So for example, the moon. People would see the moon and they wouldn't question it. They would just say, well, God put it there. There it is, kind of thing. Okay? Then we had the period of modernism after the Industrial Revolution, in the 19th century and so on, where science came into the forefront. And the idea of modernism is that knowledge is certain, onward with inevitable progress. Whatever contributes to group progress is moral. So then, during that time period, people would look at the moon and they'd say, well, we want to know scientifically, how did it get there? What's it made of? What's its purpose? How does it influence us as humans? Is it beneficial for us? And so on. So a change in thinking. And the idea was, okay, we want to move, using science and our knowledge that we have now, we're going to progress as human beings. We're going to reach this kind of a nirvana where we will be, we'll have heaven on earth. We'll become perfect as human beings. This is what modernism, so everything moving forward, advancing, this is great. Then you have things like World War II, the 60s, and people are still seeing evil. Aren't we supposed to be moving beyond this? How is this all still happening, even though we have all this good science? Why aren't we reaching a nirvana state? And so out of this thinking came what we call postmodernism. And that is, nothing is certain. You can't know truth. Or truth is relative. It's what's true for you may not be true for me. And so it's not just the advancement of humans. We're not seeing that. So just get by. Whatever you can do to get by, that's great. If you don't hurt anyone, it's moral. Okay, so you can see the stages down there with ethics, okay? Whatever God says is good is moral, to whatever contributes to human progress is moral, to now it's just don't hurt anyone. Then that's okay. And postmodernism with the moon, you have people now questioning, they say the moon landing was fake. There is no moon, that the earth is flat, and all kinds of thoughts are out there. That's what I believe. Okay? People will have their own theories and so on. So during the 60s, you've heard of the saying sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay? That happened, and during this time of that boom, build it and boomers will come, okay, the rise of postmodernism during that time, you had this period of Christian infrastructure being built, all those churches being built, and Christianity all over the country having the infrastructure increase, and at the same time, Christian beliefs and values were going down. So you have this opposite effect happening. So the mindset of church leaders in the 1960s, plant a church in the right location, it's guaranteed to grow. By the 70s, some of them are saying, oh no, we're in trouble. Look at what's happening with our culture. Morality. So, next, what's the next era? Seeker-sensitive era, 1980 through 2000. The rise of the nuns, people started to see that. You can see in the 70s there, especially that going, I was talking to you before about the nuns, people who say, no religion. What religion are you? None. So that great increase. During this time, we had what was referred to as Reagan economics, where we had this booming oversupply of goods and materials. And so then marketing became very important. If you wanted to sell your product, there's an abundant supply, so we'd better learn how to market things better. Advertising and so on. And so churches also bought into that, marketing approaches and so on. Then you had the rise of like the celebrity pastors, gifted speakers, and with television and so on. And the focus went from absolute needs to perceived needs. So perceived needs are based on what the individuals feel their needs are. So if we're going to market and we want to reach people, we need to look at what are their felt needs. What do they feel that they need? And that became the focus, not necessarily what do they need to hear. We know they need to hear law and gospel. Well, let's just look at what they feel like they need, and let's try to aim at that. We've got to be sensitive to these seekers. There's also a time when churches went from traditional music, organ, piano, those kinds of things, to more of a concert focus, kind of shifted more to look how cool our facility is, look at the hip music that we have, we've got to change and so on like that. And let's get more contemporary music, so on. Things happened like preaching, instead of preaching through the church year, a pericope, going to like sermon series. Not saying that that's wrong, but that predominantly was what the focus was with these seeker-sensitive churches. And the change, Billy Graham used to encourage people, to ask people, say to people, let me tell you about Jesus. And that moved during this time to, you should come to my church. We've got the coolest, hippest church. You need to come to our church. So, during this time, the mindset of many church leaders was, people are sick of old-fashioned church. We need to modernize. We must meet the felt needs of the unchurched. So that's a change again. So, I want you to think about this question. How much of our current ministry strategy and tactics are shaped in thoughts rooted in 20th century realities? So many of us lived through these periods of time, right? We've seen a lot of this. And that's how we thought about how we do ministry, how we do outreach, and so on. So how much are we still thinking like that today? That's the question. So here's a picture of a church, and we want people to get to the upper part of the church. We want them to come along, but we also need them to get into the foyer. What gets them into the church? What gets them into the narthex? And so traditionally, during this time, there were things like, well, the pastor. We have a celebrity pastor, or we have a very gifted pastor who's well known. Or I just need my friends to meet my pastor, and he's such a dynamic preacher that they'll surely come for that. There are the programs. We have the best preschool in town. Everyone knows our preschool. They're going to come. Or our youth group, or whatever it is. The place. We have the coolest church. Just built our church. It has a really good stage and sound system. People should come in for the place. People will join us because we've got this new church. And also the people. Statistics show that a lot of people will join a church if a friend invites them through that relationship with the people who are already members. That's always been a very strong statistic for how people join the church. And then what happens when they're in? Well, we want them to kind of get to that upper room level where you've got the Holy Spirit working. And we would say as Lutherans, through the means of grace, the word and sacrament, hearing the gospel of Christ, that they get the fruits of faith, that the faith is built and strengthened in them, and they grow in their Christian faith and knowledge and love and the understanding of salvation. So keep that picture in mind. So again, you've got this changing religious landscape. The rise of the nuns, no religion. So back to this idea, we're seeing this decline in church attendance. Closings in America. More than 5,000 per year, 96 churches closing per week. In our ELS, I was just at Bishop, California in January, and right before I got there, the pastor had the funeral for the last elder, and there were basically 4 elderly women left in the congregation. So they closed down. We're seeing that also in our Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Some have referred to the collapse of American Christianity. This is kind of the real negative look at things, okay? What has caused this? Here's a number of factors. 1, widespread acceptance of religious pluralism. Many different religions in the world. You've got Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. So instead of seeing Christianity is the truth, or religion as the truth for you, now with this postmodern thinking, it's more acceptable to religious pluralism. So that, well, hey, if thinking that when your mother died, that now, because of Jesus, she's in heaven, if that works for you, great. But if you also think that your mother died and through reincarnation she's now reincarnated as that plant in the corner and that gives you comfort, well, great, that's fine too. All right? So this idea of accepting just different thoughts of spiritualism. Secular humanism becoming the basis for morality and ethics. So secular humanism says there is no spiritual, nothing spiritual, so you can't refer to that. And a lot of our public schools, what they teach is secular humanism. So it's not just neutral, it actually doesn't teach any spirituality, and in fact teaches children that we live in a world which isn't spiritual at all. Okay, and that's widely accepted. The disappearance of the nuclear family, rise in the number of divorces taking place, promotions of alternate lifestyles when it comes to living together and heterosexuality and so on like that. When you have families where the father and mother get divorced, that presents challenges for the family. The child is shuffled between parents. Often, one of the lowest priorities when that's happening is, well, who's going to take the child to church? That becomes very low on the priority. It's also very difficult for a single parent to go to church, right? Taking care of the kids at church and trying to have them behave and having all of these righteous religious people watching me while I'm trying very hard, right? So maybe it's easier just for me not to go to church. Loss of trust in church leaders and church leaders. This is true across the board with a lot of institutions, whether it's government, trust for Congress is down, trust for the medical community is way down, all kinds of things. People don't trust the IRS. Well, church leaders as well, churches, especially with scandals that are often highlighted, Roman Catholics trying to hide, pedophiles and so on like that, people losing trust in the church. And so people in our community, they don't know that they can trust this church. Okay? So that reduces also the attendance level. Technology changing how people get information. Illocal consumption, asynchronous consumption. Maybe some of you can remember Batman. Tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And if you wanted to see that next episode of Batman, you had to be there Friday night, 7:30 to see it, or you missed out. Okay? Well, now we've changed the way we consume things. I mean, I watch on my phone as I'm traveling. I travel a lot. I can watch the next episode of whatever series I'm watching on Netflix or streaming service, right? I can be watching it at any time that I want, anywhere basically, that I have a Wi-Fi signal. And so now, in that culture, we're saying, you should come to church here, at this location, at this address, at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. And there's been a shift in how our culture views those kinds of commitments and dates. Rapid rise of individualism. So that's been a big change. In the movie Titanic, I can't remember their names, the lead names for these people, but she was promised, she was going to marry this wealthy businessman that was on the ship, and that was going to help her family because of his wealth. Her family was struggling, but she ended up falling in love with Jack. Thank you.
She is Rose.
So Jack and American audiences were like, yeah, go for Jack. Go with your feelings. Go with your heart. Right? And that's what she did. To the detriment, forget my family. Well, if you would have someone, a lady from Vietnam watching this, apparently they were shocked at this decision because in their culture, no, you have to listen to your family and take care. Why would you be so selfish like that? But in America, we're just, it's all about you. Hey, you deserve it. You should buy this new product. Right? I often wonder, I heard that on an ad while I was driving along. Like, hey, after all, don't you deserve it? And I'm thinking, what if that guy next to me in the car is a rapist or a murderer, and he's listening and he's hearing, yeah, I deserve it. I'm all right. But we're just used to that, right? It's all about you. And what's your individual, how are you feeling? What's your identity? And I choose my identity. If my parents don't like what I'm doing, I'm leaving home or I'm doing my own thing. Very predominant in our culture. And so then, living church life with community at church or following what my parents did with their faith, that's not followed. Anybody know what that is?
Kali? No, not Kali.
Krishna?
Anybody got it? Come on, it's one of the top 10 Hindu gods. Ganesh. Ganesh, the elephant god. So, I've been to India a couple times when I was on World Outreach, and you would see the Ganesh in hotel lobbies. And Ganesh has the big belly, and a lot of business people light Ganesh, and they'll light a little incense to Ganesh in the morning before they have a big business deal, because Ganesh with the big belly will come along and moves obstacles out of your way for your life. If you're making decisions, Ganesh will help make it happen. And so business people, that's one of their preferred gods. Now, we look at that and we go, that is just bizarre, right? That's so odd. That is weird. Okay, but I bet I could have talked to a local Indian Hindu and said, well, what is that flower that Ganesh is holding in one hand, and what's the bowl? And they could probably tell me all the stories, right? They've grown up with it. It's everywhere. They probably have one in their house. But to us, coming from the outside, it looks bizarre. Well, now, we have the perceived oddness of Christian doctrine by those who have little to no experience or exposure to it. So if 80% of Gen Z are not coming to church, maybe they come for Christmas, Easter maybe, but then they come in and you're drinking the blood of someone? What? What are you doing? That is so bizarre. So we have to acknowledge that oddness, that perceived oddness that people have, and that's why they're like, oh, I'm not sure I want to go, and I don't understand that. What is that all about? Everyone seems to know what's happening, but this is really weird to me. And then the perceived hypocrisy of Christians. So this idea that, well, the Christians have the 10 Commandments, but they don't even keep them themselves. And there's even a group that put out to show humanist values is humanistcommitments.org. They came up with the 10 Commitments to show that you can be righteous without having religion or spirituality. They've got things of ethical development, peace and social justice, environmentalism, global awareness. See, if you do those things, you're a good person. You don't need this spiritual stuff. All right. So that's one of the reasons for the decline. Let's look at individual people. This part is called the disappearance of the church shopper. I want you to see some of these statistics here. We can break down people into 6 different categories. The first one is Sarah the shopper. Sarah the shopper, she fairly recently attended church, or currently attending but not entirely satisfied, believes belonging to a church is beneficial, likely to join once finding the right fit. Okay, Sarah the shopper. Next we have Daniel the disengaged. Formerly churched, still considers himself Christian, no strong negative feelings about church, perhaps visits Christmas and Easter but doesn't think regular attendance is vital to faith, feels guilt when confronted with disengagement. Third one is Teresa the turned off. Had a bad experience with church. Has not felt negative impact of quitting. Instead feels some relief. Spiritual, believes in God, prays, just doesn't want anything to do with organized religion. Fourth one is Hunter, the happy humanist. Atheist or agnostic, feels people can achieve morality and live meaningfully apart from religion, but he has no strong animosity towards those who are Christian. Happy humanist. Then you have Andrew the assailant. He is most likely always atheistic or agnostic, no religious background, feels religion, and particularly Christianity does more harm than good. Paints Christians in ugly terms, vocal in his anti-Christian views.
Pastor,
And
Can
then,
you use a different name for that one? Sorry, Andy.
oh. No, that's the one I'm sticking with, Andrew. You can set a new trend. And then the last one is Usain the unexposed. Has almost no experience of the church, with the church beyond weddings and funerals. And nowadays, who knows what a wedding or funeral will be like, if he's going with his friends. Has few friends or family who are Christian. Those who are do not talk about it. Most knowledge he has about Christianity is what he has heard in the media. So that's probably not going to be very good. So those are the 6. Now let's look at some stats here. So you got Sarah the shopper, Daniel the disengaged, so on, down to Usain the unexposed. All right, on this side. 1980, 2000, 2020. 1980, 33% of the population was Sarah the Shoppers. 33% of people were probably looking for a church in 1980. So that shows you that, hey, build a church, put a sign out the front. 33% of the people in this community are going to, we're going to get a lot of visitors. Some of them are going to join. 38%, Daniel the Disengaged. 13% turned off, Happy Humanist. 9%, The Assailant. 6%, Unexposed. Just 1% unexposed in 1980. By the year 2000, Sarah the Shopper declined to just 22% of the population. Disengaged, that had increased, 41%. Turned off 16, Happy Humanist, 11, Assailant, 7, Unexposed, a little bit of an increase there, 3%. Now look at the change to 2020, in those 2 decades. Sarah the Shopper, 5%. 5% from 33%. Disengaged, 13%. Now look at the jump here. The turned off, 20%. Happy Humanist, 33%. Assailant, 11%, and the unexposed. We go from virtually nothing and in 20 years to 18% of the population. So that's a huge change, right? Now if you consider that Sarah the Shopper and Daniel the Disengaged, they're both kind of low-hanging fruit for joining a church. They're still positive towards the church. Probably would join one. 1980, 71% of the population was in that category. Now, 18%. Those who had kind of more anti-Christian views or just, they either not interested in church or anti-church, from 28% to 64% of the population. And then, of course, the unexposed, gone from 1% now to 18%. So, really take notice of that top figure though. When you think about our strategies with reaching out to people and trying to get people to come and visit our churches. And then think of the opportunity that we have with unexposed. Okay, that's actually increased, right? Maybe there's opportunities there. Trying to look at this in a positive light. The harvest field is very ripe there. So, if Americans are not church shopping in large numbers, what does it mean for our outreach and evangelism strategies? What does it mean for our outreach and evangelism strategies? So we've got to change thinking. Now, many of you lived through a time when that was the way you did things. We just assumed there were a lot of Sarah the Shoppers out there. Now what do? Okay? So, think of it this way. What gets them in? This is the old way of thinking. Pastor, programs might get them in. The place might get them in. The people might get them in. Pastor. Well, I'm not interested in church. In fact, I felt some relief when I left the church. Well, we've got a great preacher. He's fantastic. You should hear some of Pastor Kerr's sermons. I don't care. I'm not looking for a church. Okay? But the programs, we've got the best preschool in town. Don't you want your kids well, I'm not sure if I want my kids to be in church. But our church is just fantastic. It's brand new. We just built, fantastic. I don't care. I'm not looking for a church. Does anybody here hate golf or dislike golf? Okay. All right. We got a few people who don't like golf. Okay. Well, but Danica, we have this fantastic golf pro at the course. Okay. You're like, I don't care. I don't like golf. All right. But we have these great training programs and so on. I don't care. I'm not interested in golf. But our golf courses have been voted #1 in the nation, the manicured. I don't care. I'm not interested at all in golf. You see how this works? But what about people? Okay, people. The connections with people. Okay? Well, Danica, what about if a bunch of your girlfriends are going to get together, gonna hit a, just do best ball for a few holes, and then we're gonna go to the clubhouse, have some wine, and chat and so on. Are you interested in going to that?
Absolutely.
Maybe, okay. All right, but you see the difference there. So the people still, and statistics show, people who join a church, normally through relationships that they've built with members. So that's key right there. So the path forward, relationship building, outreach. All right, now.
Would now be a good time to stretch, or am I?
Yes.
Okay. So, we do
Because I have something planned for the stretch,
Do you? Okay.
Yes.
Can we also incorporate a picture of the group
Sure.
in the sanctuary?
Oh, you want to do that now?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, I was going to get you to do Dr. Eric Goodman's The Founder training. Okay, it's really good for your back, but we're going to do this photo instead. This is a stretch. If you have back issues, it's really good for in between, like getting you to stretch out. Type that into YouTube, and really, if you have lower back issues, really fantastic.
We're going to take a pause here.
But instead, we're going to stretch and go into the sanctuary, get a photo of our group, and come back.
I want to hit golf ball.
Yeah. No hitting golf balls. So there's a second part to this presentation. You want to be here for it. And we're going to come back to it at 1:55. Okay, we're going to shift things a little bit. And don't worry, I have a short closing devotion, so we'll have time for the business meeting and all that. But what we're going to do is just take a stretch, and we're all going to go to the sanctuary. And Andy wants to take a picture on the sanctuary steps.
And no one can leave. I'm afraid of this because I gave you all the bad news. Now I want to give you the good news. Okay, so don't leave now. I don't want you to leave now. right.
Did any female or male lead a verse in front of you? No need.
It's too bright.
It was too bright, yeah.
All right. Glad that you made it back in here. And let's get started again. Microphone. That would probably help. Okay. Is that better? All right.
Nope, you gotta get the microphone in your mouth.
All right. Now can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. I'm going to start building this case for relationship building outreach, but just a few more slides with stats in, and I promise that'll be the end of the numbers, okay? So this is unchurched views of church and Christians. Unchurched views of church and Christians. And this is taken from Barna Research, Pew Research Center, and another one there. It's kind of putting some of their stats together. The church is full of hypocrites. 72% agree with that statement. The church is full of hypocrites.
So what do you tell them when they say that?
God loves them anyway.
Church is, it's full of sinners, I guess. But,
Oh, that's why we're there.
yeah.
There's always room for one more.
Yeah. Thank you. There's always room for one more. Carmen Jones. But the church is full of hypocrites. 72% agree. Christian leaders are more concerned about the success of the church than loving God and people. 79% agree with that statement.
Oh,
My church-attending friends live more morally than my unchurched friends. No, only 23% agree with that. See that? Okay, now let's look at this next page. I have at least one close friend who is a Christian. 89% agree. They have a close friend who's a Christian. I would enjoy an honest conversation about religious beliefs. 78% agree. In the 18 to 29 category, 89% agree with that. 90% of younger folk. I would enjoy an honest conversation about religious beliefs. My Christian friends talk too much about their beliefs. Well, only 28% agree with that. So what's going on here with the previous slide and all those terrible statistics, and then this one is kind of more positive? What's the difference between the two? Anybody see what was different?
There's a hunger in wanting to know.
This what?
There's a hunger in wanting to know.
Okay.
It's all about the people they know, the friendships.
Okay, thank you. So this slide is about people they know and friendships. The previous one was about the church, okay, in general. There's a difference there with how people perceive the church and how they perceive their friends that they know who are Christian. Big difference in how they view things. So that's important for us as we think about how do we reach out to people. So unchurched Americans have a negative view of churches and Christians in general. However, they don't have an overly negative view of the Christians they know. And they are open to having honest conversations about religious beliefs. So that is very key for how we do how we think about our strategies and tactics for outreach. We have to play on that. We have to use that. So I would encourage a two-pronged approach. Relationship building outreach, building those relationships for everyone, the membership of the congregation, but also relationship building focus for church activities. When you're doing things as a congregation, it should also focus on relationship building. So let's look at that one first. There is a book here, Meaningful Outreach, an essential guide for churches. It came out a few years ago. And I know your pastor has a copy of this. Well, Pastor Kerr has a copy of this because this is his copy I got from his office. And I've given this out to a lot of our pastors, and I think that even the church council here went through this already, I believe. But Pastor Wood has some good points that he makes about outreach. Let's see, what did I want? Page 30. The Thanksgiving dinner, he talks about this congregation in the Midwest. They were well known for their Thanksgiving turkey supper that they would have every year. In fact, they would have 1,000 people from the community come through their church for this Thanksgiving supper. Well known in the community for that. And yet, next Sunday, no one would show up at church. What happened? And so he asked them, well, what were your members doing to build relationships with those 1,000 people? They said, oh no, we're all too busy serving turkey, cleaning up, and so we don't have time for that. Okay, so it wasn't working. So now it may have been good to have a nice, perhaps a benefit of that is you have a good reputation in the community, but really it wasn't doing much for building relationships. And he talks about, listen to this, the problem with one and done activities and events is they don't provide the time and interaction it takes to develop a relationship. Imagine a young couple going on their first date. Everything is going well. They really enjoy each other's company and they discover many common interests. Towards the end of their time together, the young man tells the young lady that he is very much enjoying their date. He explains that this is the best first date he has ever had. She replies that she is also enjoying their date and is pleased with how well it has gone. Then, to her shock and amazement, the young man says to her, "That's great. Based on this date, I think we should get married. Would you marry me?" How do you think that young lady is going to respond to his spontaneous proposal? How might she respond if he asks her for a second date instead? Probably say yes, right? How might she respond? How would her reaction be different if he proposed to her after several dozen dates instead of on their first date? Probably much more likely. As silly as this first date story is, it reflects how many congregations approach outreach. At or after a single relationship-building activity or event, the congregation invites the non-church person to come to worship or join a Bible study. From a non-church person's perspective, it's like being proposed to on a first date. Relationships take time and require ongoing interaction between people. And not just any people, but the same non-church people interacting with the same church members over time. So that's a big difference. So there's really not a lot of difference with the outreach. It's just that you need to take more time building the relationship with the people, nurturing that relationship. Okay? And thinking of things, not just one and done events, like the Thanksgiving turkey supper. Okay? Or trunk or treats. Those are real popular nowadays. But again, I would argue, what relationship are you building with that? And yet churches put a lot of effort into these things. For what? So think about that. Go through, what is your church doing? Do we have some of these one and done activities? Yeah, maybe we've done them for 20 years. And they may have worked back in 1980 or 2000. What are we doing? So reassess. Let's just go through that. Everyone Outreach is a great program the Wells offers, and they allow it for ELS congregations as well. And I've done that a few times. It really focuses in on how you can be more focused and welcoming and building relationships. So now let's do, for members, individuals, what can you do? A couple of things. Ephesians 5:2. the Apostle Paul says, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. When you go to your church, when you go to worship, you're getting that wonderful fragrance of Christ. You're breathing that in. You're getting that on you as you hear about how he paid for your sins, what he went through for you. He's done everything for your salvation so that you can have heaven one day, an eternal life. And that beautiful fragrance which wafted up from the cross and filled God the Father's nostrils, and he forgave the world of their sins, that's what we get when we go to church. So we need to continue that. We need to continue preaching. We need to continue administering the sacraments. And you as members need to double down on that. Don't fall into this, I'm going to just go to church, twice a month or once a month. But really enjoy that and appreciate that time of being nurtured. And then secondly, 2 Corinthians 2:14, the Apostle Paul says, but thanks be to God who in Christ always leads us in triumphal procession and through us spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of him everywhere. So you go out of church, you've got that fragrance on you, okay? And then you go out into the community and you take that fragrance and that goes onto other people from you. Just like you might hug a significant other and later on you can smell them, you can smell their aroma. So too we go out as Christians and we spread that aroma. Maybe I could use the dandelion, the seed, and it spreads out, okay? So we need to do both of those. Double down on those. Matthew 5, Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, let your light shine in people's presence, so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. People will see, if you're doing your good works in front of other people, they'll question, well, why is Bob so different to other people that I know? How come he does this? They will see that presence in people's presence. Martin Luther said, God doesn't need your good works, but your neighbor does. So you're saved, your good works don't save you. Jesus did that for you. But God still wants you to do good works. Why? For your neighbor. Out of appreciation for what God has done for you, we want to serve our neighbor. This is my house that I bought in 2021 in North Mankato. You can see my home down there. We were very blessed to find this house and on a good street. It's very easy nowadays. You can see how the garages are prominent on the house. People can drive home from work, hit the button, drive their car in, close the garage door behind them. You have to really be watching your neighbor's house to see your neighbors sometime, right? We have internet, we have freezers, we have everything stored in our house. You get a lot of situations where you hear of people living next to each other for years and not knowing each other, right? It takes effort to build those relationships, that nurturing part. And so that's what I'd encourage you. And I'm trying to get to know my neighbors. There's Maggie and Ryan live in the house directly opposite us, and we see them quite often and try to chat to them. And Todd and Ruth are up in the corner house. Jennifer and Darren live down in the one that's two across from us. And we were out walking one afternoon and saw Jennifer walking her dog and met her and had a good discussion with her and found out she had a special needs child who had died a few years earlier. And so had a conversation about that, but it opened a door, getting to know. And so my point is thinking about how can I get to know my neighbors? It takes effort, but I think it's going to be a very good thing, and I think it can lead to a lot of good relationships and connections as you serve them. We had a night to unite, they call it, once a year in the late summer. The city will come around with their fire trucks and police department, And you can have, invite kids. So we just put on hot dogs and we invited the whole community over. And everyone loved it. We had almost everyone on our street came to it. And they just are relishing this time of getting to know their neighbors. People are really yearning for this, I think. There's my daughter spraying the fire hose. And so there's ideas like that where you can build relationships with people. There are Bible studies available. This one is available. It's called Let's Go. It's available at wellscongregationalservices.net. Let's Go. And this one is a video Bible study, and it teaches love, listen, lead. The first part is love. Have that love for your neighbor, for the unchurched person. Loving them and praying for them. Pray for opportunities. Lord, give me an opportunity to talk to my neighbors. Open doors for me. Then, listen. One of the objections to outreach, a lot of people have fear about evangelism and speaking to others. And a couple of the top comments you'll hear is, I don't know what to say, right? That's one. And two is, another one you often hear is, well, I'm kind of more of an introvert, so I'm not really good at that kind of thing. Well, I want to tell you, you don't have to say anything. You can do small talk or whatever with them, but just listen. Listen to the person. Get to know them. Ask them questions about themselves. Introverts are actually very good at listening. They're better than extroverts in general. They're better than extroverts at listening and thinking of good questions. So for building relationships, extroverts often are very good at a party. They can go around, work the whole party and talk to everyone, loves them. But any deep conversations? Well, maybe, but introverts are very good at asking pertinent questions. In general, I'm speaking. So listen. You don't need to have scripture passages memorized or, presentations memorized. Just listen to them. And wait till they tell you about their tragedy that happened in their life, a few months ago or whatever. Opening doors there. And then when that happens, lead. Think about how can I lead them either through my words, giving them comfort, the same comfort that I have in the gospel, maybe bad experiences I had in my life, how sin hurt me and how the gospel is meaningful to me and what Jesus has done. Or lead them through an invitation to your pastor. Okay? Do you have a pastor? Do you have somebody, this professional who takes care of your soul in your life? He's really good. You should meet my pastor. He's great. Okay? So love, listen, lead is a good way to think of things. I know I'm running out of time here. I got a ton more things to look at. You'll be my witnesses. We heard that. So I think I'm going to have to wrap it up there, though. I know you have to have the business meeting and so on. But I think you're getting the picture of what I'm encouraging now. It's nothing new, really. It's just that instead of meeting with someone and giving them an immediate invite to church, okay, like we used to be able to do, or just putting a sign out the front and people would come to church right away, now we have to work at that initial stage with them before that invitation comes along. We need to take more time in nurturing relationships, doing good works to serve our friend network, friends, relatives, associates, and neighbors. Because we want them to know about the solution to sin, which is Jesus, our Savior, and to have that fragrance. So, any questions? Great, I have a question right away.
I moved from Michigan to Ohio 7 years ago.
Okay.
My back kitty-corner neighbor is a pastor.
Okay.
He was taught by the pastor he went with. He's never had any schooling, but he has church in town. Every 2-3 months, I give his wife all my used meditations, and she takes them willingly. She said, I love you. I said, would you like to read this? I said, I've read it. I'm going to throw it away. And she said, sure, I'd like to read it. So now I give her 3 or 4 at a time.
Right. So you're building that relationship there
So
just
she,
by,
She loves me dearly.
Right.
She tells me every time I see her.
yeah,
But we both have medical issues, so we don't see each other real often.
yeah,
But I thought if I can influence her, maybe she can influence him
right.
to get more training.
Okay.
What he's talking about.
Yes. All right. Other questions that you have? Or any comments on anything that you saw? Yeah.
Are there any specific events that, like examples of events that you feel like work better than the like one and done type?
Yes. So I would say things like doing a financial, if you're inviting people to church, you could do like a financial help for young parents or something like that, or for families. Financial planning for families, like a peace, what is it?
Financial Peace.
Financial Peace University, the Dave Ramsey thing, I think it's like a 6 or 7 week course. So then you'll have people coming back each week for 7 weeks, and make sure the key is your members need to be there as well, and they need to talk to people, and then the next week they need to come back and look for the same person that they spoke to the previous week. So this doesn't all fall on the pastor. He can only develop relationships with so many people. You members have to be at these events, and not just for yourself. Go there to learn about the Peace University, great. But your first goal should be, how can I talk to the visitors who are coming along and build a relationship with them? See, so it's a little bit of a sacrifice on your part. That I'm not, you can learn, and great, I'm here to learn that, but I'm also thinking at the same time, how can I help the visitors? Another one that I think is good is to use, if you have a lot of our middle-aged and older men in our congregations, and maybe a lot of the women as well, know a lot about car mechanics, how to change the oil, and fix things, and a lot of young, Gen Zs and so on, they're not learning a lot of that nowadays, especially if they're from a broken family, and so you could have a Saturday car maintenance workshop and have all the men there doing this. They love that kind of thing, and have these young, guys coming along and develop relationships with them that way. So ideas like that, where you're looking at repetitive events for a number of weeks.
Do you know if anybody has had any success with any type of support group?
With support
A
groups?
support group of some kind, whether it's...
I don't know of any examples I can give you, but I'm sure that would be something that would be very helpful.
Mental health or
Yeah.
AA or,
Right.
Okay.
Okay, great question. Any other questions? Yeah.
That question, the statement, our congregation does several things trying to invite the public to
You have
come
Pastor
in.
Freemuth at your... He is an ideas guy. That guy comes up with fantastic
Every time you
ideas.
turn around,
I'm trying to get him on our board. So, yeah.
One of our bigger ones is what we call backpack blessing.
Yes.
And we give backpacks away, and we get everything that's on the list from the school that the kids need. Kleenex, pencils, erasers, crayons, scissors, folders, earphones, whatever. And then after they do the backpack thing, he takes them up, has them come up in the church, and he does just a short little devotional and invites them and hands out a thing and says, are you looking for a church? Would you be interested in your children coming to a midweek Bible class or catechism classes and stuff? And then offers that to them. And then after that, they come back down into the fellowship hall, and they have hot dogs and chips and cookies and drinks and stuff. And it gives the people from the congregation a chance to wait on these people and bring them the food and talk to them. And one of the most frustrating things for us this year was a family that only spoke Spanish, and we were not able to communicate with them. And it just made us feel bad when we went home, because there was that one family that we weren't really able to communicate with. So, you know, having somebody else in your congregation that would speak Spanish to be there, or somebody that you know that would be willing to come to your church and participate in your church activity, helps you to reach out to more people. And then other people, when we got done with this, we had people approaching the pastor because they wanted their children baptized. And we had, I believe it was 4 or 5 children from outside our church that wanted to come to our Wednesday catechism classes, and so our Wednesday catechism class is building because we're reaching out with these school supplies before school even starts.
What congregation?
Peace Lutheran Church in Dashwood, Ohio. So backpack blessing worked really well, but you gotta have the support from the congregation, because we get the backpacks, but the congregation donates all the supplies that are given to these families. And then the meals and that, I don't know if you guys are aware of Thrivent, but we will get backing with Thrivent funds to help provide the meal for them, or whatever. So it is a very good program for your church to take on, because it does bring people in. It gives you that chance to be one-on-one with people you don't know. And you never know if that person or that family will all of a sudden start turning up in the church service also.
Well, thank you. Yes. And I featured that in my Missionary to Missionary email newsletter, in fact.
Oh, did you?
You can sign up for that on an els.org. Go to newsletters and sign up for Missionary to Missionary. I've got ideas, I email them out once a month. But I've gone way over time. I apologize, Pastor. I'll hand it back to you now. But thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope this has been helpful.
Check 1, 2.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to our president, I guess, and get into the business meeting. This is my first time being on one of these, and I think it's Michelle's first time too, so just however it goes. There you go.
However it goes. However it goes. All right.